it wasn't so much a mental collapse as a physical collapse, a transfigural collapse, a literal collapse. Reading succumbed to a 4-0 defeat to Ipswich on Saturday, which, as those words come out of my mouth, I'm still not entirely sure whether to believe them or not. But such is life in the Championship, and such is life towards the bottom of the Championship, that these things just kind of happen every now and again. Welcome to the Tilehurst podcast. I am Marc, Mayo, host, as per usual, and joining me for this episode, which is episode number 160 of the show, is Dave Handbags Harris, who is no doubt looking for the positives after that defeat to Ipswich.
No, not really. I've demanded to be on this podcast, as you well know, Marc. So there are very few positives. There are no positives, actually. Let's not say very few. Let's not beat around the bush. There are no positives to take from Saturday. Let's crack on and let's let rip.
Well, yeah, it's actually sometimes a little bit hard to get people on the podcast, but when after the full-time whistle blows and I get a WhatsApp message demanding to be on the podcast to slam the team, no doubt, as effectively as possible, I'm fully up for the passion. It's kind of like a penalty shootout. If someone wants to take a kick, absolutely give them the ball. And I will, just before we crack on with that, a quick bit of housekeeping from the podcast in general. Thank you to everyone who continues to donate to the Patreon campaign. I want to do a full rundown of everyone who's given money this season at the end of season podcast. The end of season podcast is likely to be recorded around about May the 10th, so the weekend after that it will go online. Hoping to be down the spread eagle. If anyone wants to be involved in that, if anyone lives around that sort of area, around Thursday, May the 10th, then give us an email on tilehurstend@gmail.com. We're more than happy to have people come down to that. And we're hoping also, this is kind of in discussions with the club, before then in the kind of, again, like Wednesday, May the 9th, around that sort of time, we're looking to do a women's podcast as well. So if anyone has any specific questions relating to the women's team, Reading Women, get that in, because they're on the May the 12th playing Liverpool at home, final home game of the season at the Madstad. So we'll hopefully be doing something around that, just kind of in the last discussions with the club at the moment. Something to look forward to for a team with Reading on their shirt that is actually doing quite well. Speaking of a team that isn't doing quite well, let's get on then with the recap and the Ipswich game.
The Tilehurst End podcast. Read the blog on thetilehurstend.com.
So Dave, one Saturday 3 p.m. home win all season against Preston. Even the Sunderland and Ipswich games we thought might be a bit of a given didn't happen. As the end of season review will be coming next week, but just to underline the fact that Reading FC in 2017-18, the home form table in the Championship, Reading will be in the relegation zone for the home form table, and a 4-0 defeat at home to Ipswich. What went wrong?
Well, do you know what? For 17 minutes, we were okay, and you could easily paint a case for Reading leading fairly comfortably, but the chances they did create weren't taken. I'm thinking Shawnee Aluko early in the first half, the magnificent counter-attack, it has to be said, after about 65 minutes. But once they conceded that first goal, it was like a deck of cards, and it's been indicative of the side all season. And we've had some fairly heavy defeats this season, and the players have come out and apologised, and I'm sorry, but it's just platitudes now, quite frankly. If you're going to apologise after a heavy defeat, then fucking well learn from it, all right? But if you're going to capitulate at home, then at least show some bloody desire. And no player, absolutely no player, is being spared from any criticism tonight, from the 11 men who started to the, I don't know how many subs, was it 2 subs that we had? 3 subs. I'd be on caring, to be honest with you, after at 2-0. Never in the last decade, I have not been so angry at a second goal going in the manner that we let it in, with absolutely no nous in any way whatsoever, with Chris Gunter not being anywhere near as close to his man as he should have done, with no tracking from Mo Barrow, Liam Moore completely failing to engage the man. He's the nearest defender to Dominic Spence, and Vito Minone left being, I have a little bit of sympathy with him being totally and utterly exposed. you could argue that he should have done better with the goal, but when a ball is belted low into your between your feet, there's not, you're hoping for a little bit of luck. And let's face it, Reading, we're not going to have that flipping luck at this stage of the season. And then the third and fourth goals, shameful. With that fourth goal in particular, Liam Kelly has just let his midfielder. The midfielder, I can't think of the guy who scored the goal beyond caring, as I say. But the midfielder, once Waghorn got hold of the ball, he had 5 yards on Liam Kelly, and he's planted the ball in 5 yards ahead of Liam Kelly. It is absolutely shamefully pathetic, and they deserve all of the bullets that are being fired their way. Utterly shameful from the 71st minute onwards. And if none of them get offered a contract, or if they're all released at the end of the season, then quite frankly, they deserve it.
I can't disagree with any of that. I'm just having a look at the whoscored.com ratings, and they've given Mannone 2 errors for the goals. I'm not sure where the second Mannone error must have been the second goal, and obviously the third one as well. Elphick as well being awarded with an error. But Liam Moore, who scored, I mean, I admit it's a bit odd for me to pick up on this, but Liam Moore got a 6.2 out of 10 for who scored's ratings, whereas the Ipswich defenders got like 7 out of 10. And the first goal in particular was it's absolute joke defending from Liam Moore. Some of the worst defending I've seen in my time watching football. When he knows the man is there, and he's 3 yards away from him, and he's about 3 yards away from his own goal as well. He knows where Martin Waghorn is. He looks at him, he points at him, he doesn't close him down. The ball goes to him, he looks at him again, he scores, and then he looks at the linesman and says, why wasn't that given? Well, it wasn't given because Waghorn can look down the line and just line himself up. It's not hard. We are conceding goals that aren't hard to score. The second goal, as you say, I've written down that Gunter and Barrow are the ones that I picked out as well. No one closes down Spence. Third goal, absolute joke defending from Gunter and Mannone. Just complete calamity, can't legislate for that. Fourth goal, Elphick has a bit of a shocker. Joke defending.
You can, because Chris Gunter... Sorry, that third goal, you can. Because Chris Gunter's been in that situation before. If you remember the 7th goal against Arsenal. Chris Gunter in particular is an international defender and a very, very experienced international defender. And if he hasn't learnt from that specific incident against Arsenal to commit the same error, albeit a number of years later, but irrelevant. The fact is, he's a professional footballer, and all of us in our lives, if we do not learn from our mistakes, then you start questioning your own qualities and your own personal qualities. And Chris Gunter, in that instance, needs to really, really look at himself, because Vito Mannone will take the hammering for that. But Chris Gunter put him in that situation when he didn't need to. A better header, a header with more conviction, or anything other than what he did. He will, we may well concede, but do something. Ultimately, just do something different. You've got to make. The long and short of it is that he's got to make sure that he gets enough on that header, and he didn't. So, as far as I'm concerned, the majority of the problem in that third goal lies with Chris Gunter. You're right with Liam Moore in the first goal, with Waghorn looking along the line. Let's not forget, though, that he's only looking along half of the line. Waghorn doesn't look behind him. Who's behind Liam Moore and Waghorn? It's Thiago Ilori. Why is Thiago Ilori not either approaching Waghorn or calling Liam Moore to get back and step back 2 or 3 yards? Defending, probably the vast majority of defending, is about communication, talking to your fellow players. And Thiago Ilori, I'm afraid, has also let Liam Moore down there. As much as it's Liam Moore's fault for not recognising the situation that he's in, Ilori needs to take as much of that for not letting Moore know what's going on, not knowing what to do. And I'm afraid, again, Thiago Ilori is one of those players who we've spent millions and millions of pounds on him. And if he can't do the basics of communication, then he's not worth 3.5p, let alone £3.5 million.
Yeah, the thing is with Laurie that Omar Richards got taken off after 59 minutes to have, I believe it was an injury. There must have been for Elphick to come on, which meant that someone had to go left back. Chris Gunter was the man nominated to go left back. Gunter, I think he's done alright at left back this season, so I was surprised how much he dropped off. But then Ilori went to right back and basically just lost his head. It was almost as if you'd asked him to go and play hockey. I've never seen a centre back move 3 yards to the right hand side and just lose everything around him. So yeah, his future, he must be one of the more saleable assets in the Reading team should Paul Clement move on. The third goal, as I say with the third goal, it was Paul, from a Paul Clement point of view, that you can't really legislate for that. From a defending point of view, Gunter, just get it anywhere apart from your own net, basically. He hasn't done that, and the fourth goal came 19 seconds after kickoff for the third, and I think by then you're just looking at it just sums it up, doesn't it?
Do you know what? With that fourth goal, you learn a hell of a lot in adversity. In that fourth goal, you're looking at players, and that's where you know the character of your players. And Tommy Elphick, his pass, whether or not he cared, he didn't care enough to make sure, put it that way. All right, and that's one of the qualities you're looking for. You're making sure players still well care. And Tommy Elphick didn't put enough care into his pass. Martin Waghorn gets hold of the ball. He gets hold of the ball, and you've got the midfielder, as I say, Liam Kelly. The midfielder runs past Liam Kelly. Kelly doesn't speed up his run. He just lets him carry on. Kelly he puts minimal effort into it. Liam Kelly, in that instance, you found out a lot about him, and I've not slated Liam Kelly at all. He's one of those. The chant goes, he's one of our own, and there is always that propensity for supporters to defend players that have made it into the first team and been and done it and effectively shown some wherewithal. In that instance, Kelly showed his character, and I'm sorry, shameful. And Liam Moore again backing off in Martin Waghorn's in his, not in his wake but in front of him. Waghorn gets hold of the ball, and Moore, he does basically what Chris Gunter has a habit of doing. It's just backing off, and he made it easy for Waghorn. He made it so easy to play the ball into the path of the midfielder. He just didn't make Waghorn make a decision. He made the decision for him. And yeah, like I say, you learn a hell of a lot in adversity. And at 4-0, that's when you're looking for a little bit of character, a little bit of pride, a little bit of I want to call it. I always want to call it sort of professional ambition, as it were. To not be absolutely humiliated. Let's look at the absolute facts. This is an Ipswich team that lost 4-0 at home the week before. They didn't want to show themselves up again, but there's no question, given that we had something to play for and they didn't, we should have been going out to beat them. I've no question of saying that we did go out to beat them. Paul Clement put out a team that he rightly thinks had the shape to beat them. But when you're constantly looking at players and the all-round character of the team, and they're not doing what they're told, Paul Clement has come out and told everybody, players haven't done what they're told. Jaap Stam kept on saying, players haven't done what they're told. People can have a go at Jaap Stam, but actually, let's just look at this objectively. There's two managers now that are coming out and saying exactly the same damn thing. Maybe it's time to start looking somewhere other than the manager.
Yeah, and it's funny as well because, I'll go through what Paul Clement said in a minute, but as we kind of want to touch on that point you made right at the top of the show, is that if John Swift scores that really rather decent counter-attack we had, we're laughing. And this is the first game under Clement where we've had more shots than the opposition. And I want to sort of raise a point, a bit controversial I suppose, but in a way, so long as we don't actually get relegated, this is kind of, this is the right time for this to have happened, with the relative safety that we've got, with the fact that we've got the summer now ahead of us. Paul Clement's been in the job for a few games now, has the measure of his team. And you're right when you say you learn a lot in adversity. We've learned exactly what we don't need at this football club, and that's a lot of the players that are playing. And there cannot be after this game a sense of kidding ourselves that this team next season, with a bit of work and a couple of signings, is going to become a playoff pushing team or even a mid-table championship team. It's not going to happen. And this defeat, for me, crystallises just how far we have to go and shows us, in a sort of kind of way, the path to getting there.
Mm. This is a very simplistic way of looking at it. Some people may not agree with me. But at full time, or at 3-0, 4-0, I was talking to, in the South Stand, to one of the South Stand organisers, Sam, about the character of the side and the qualities of the side. And the 11 players that were on the pitch, plus the 2 or 3 players that came off the bench, there was one, perhaps 2, that you would be looking at being good enough to be in a scrap. Absolutely everybody else, every other player, are the last players you want in a scrap. You don't want Manone in a scrap. You don't want Gunter in a scrap. You don't want Ilori in a scrap. You don't want Kelly in a scrap. You don't want Swift in a scrap. Maybe Budvarsson, Liam Moore, absolutely. Kermorgant, probably not. You probably wouldn't want him in a scrap. Literally, one player was an absolute shoo-in for being, in a physical sort of scrapping battle, and that speaks volumes of the squad that we've accumulated. And much of we're going to go to Cardiff, and they're a team full of battlers. Look, they're Neil Warnock side, and it's all well and good with our players when the going's good, but when the tough gets going, they absolutely capitulate, and we've seen that in the second half of this season, where they've been shown absolutely no bottle, no backbone, no fight, very, very little fight. And when they have shown that fight, and I'm looking Derby, for example, I'm looking at the sort of the Burton game, I'm looking at Leeds, I'm looking at QPR and Preston. Anytime that they do show any fight, very, very quickly there's any goodwill that they manage to garner from the support has absolutely capitulated. It's absolutely drifted away within minutes of the next performance, simply because they haven't got that level of backbone. And a lot of that, I believe, is because, and I've said this on a few occasions, on a number of occasions actually, that, and this is an element that I don't think can be understated. I've always questioned it, but suddenly we have a squad of players that do not care. They do not have the level of professional pride and the care for the club that players who have worked their way through the youth ranks and worked their way into the first team picture. And they may not be the best players that we've ever had in the past, but by Christ, they cared. And I'm looking at players like Jem Karachan. Now, Bolton supporters are getting on his back at the moment because he's being so pro-Reading. Everything on his social media feed is pro-Reading. I'm looking at Alex Pearce, not quite the same, but by Christ, he cared. You're looking at Adam Federici, who was at the club for a long, long time. And yes, he might not have been the greatest goalkeeper in the world, but he cared. And there was even in those lean times of 2014 to 2015, they cared. And you could tell, even though we would lose a number of games, the amount of pride there was in that, you could tell they hurt when they lost. They didn't want to be in that situation. You simply don't get that at the moment. You don't get that feeling with Thiago Ilori, who just goes around with a poker face. You don't get that with John Swift, who again goes around with a poker face, very deadpan. Now, maybe that's just their character, and I'm not looking to change their character, but they haven't been here for years. They haven't grown up in the club. These are, you're looking at Swift, you're looking at Ilori, you're looking at Tyler Blackett, you're looking at players like that. They've supposedly got ability. They've played for some of the biggest clubs in Europe, stroke the world, in the first team. They should have some care. And I just wonder what those big clubs are actually, what level of quality, of personal quality, those big clubs are instilling in those players for them to drop down to a seemingly lesser club and they don't give a damn. They don't appear to give a damn. It's shameful. It's absolutely shameful. Give me a Jack Stacey, who is not as talented as John Swift, but will give his heart to the club over and above John Swift, or Dave Edwards, or Joey Vandenberg. I'd much rather Jack Stacey try and fail, as it were, than Joey Vandenberg or Dave Edwards try for a season and fail.
I mean, I agree completely with that. But one of the points that the next thing that I want to talk about is Paul Clement. And do you think that Paul Clement is someone who can drag that back out? What he said after the game was, we gave them a goal which, when you look back on it, is awful, absolutely awful. The second and third goals were not much better and we fell apart. In the end, the result is really bad, but the performance is shameful, embarrassing. I held the players back to talk to them after the final whistle, and discussions with individuals will be done in private as always, but I can assure Reading fans that they will be done. I can't remember having to stand and talk to the media after the game in these circumstances. I'm responsible for that with the players, and I have to apologise to our fans for that they have to come and witness that today. Does Paul Clement have, or has he shown to you so far that he has that level of pride and Reading specific pride, and how much sort of blame do you put on him for the performance at the moment? Because I'm hesitant in putting the blame on him. As much as I put the blame on Jaap Stam by the time he'd gone, I just don't feel like the fact that nothing's changed just shows to me that the manager is kind of irrelevant to this. And the reasons we sacked Jaap Stam was the boring football more than anything, and the way he portrayed himself in the media. The way that the players are playing on the pitch just shows that they're the common denominator.
I think the players are obviously the common denominator. I've gone into great detail about the lack of backbone. Quite frankly, the lack of backbone in the squad, the lack of fight, the lack of professional pride in many of the players. And Paul Clement's got to manage that. He's chosen to take that on. And in much the same way as Amber Rudd was the Home Secretary, as the fall guy of the department, Paul Clement will also be the fall guy of the department, because he still puts the players out there. And if he has serious reservations of some of the players, then quite frankly, they shouldn't play for the club again. Based on that shame-faced performance on Saturday, there are certain players, some of whom I have mentioned, who I also don't think should play for the club again, quite frankly. I think there's a Paul Clement can only play the cards that he's got in his hand, and if they're not going to display the level of performance that either Stam or Clement desire, then ship them out of the club. Quite frankly, look at what we've done with the likes of Pogrebniak. Maybe just cancel the contracts, even if they've got a year or two left. If they displayed the significant lack of desire that they've displayed this season, then quite frankly they don't deserve to see out the contracts. Some of the players will be out of contract and shouldn't be offered them. But if the likes of Pogrebniak and Hope Akpan and whatnot, although they showed a lack of desire, certainly Pogrebniak did at one point, you could argue a case that they've not even played to the levels of expectation that's required of them to maintain their contract. So a lot of them would ship them out. I'm not entirely sure that there's a case for them to cancel a contract on a lack of performance, because they're still going out there. They're doing what they're told to do, as it were. They're going out to play football. But yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure we want to see half of this flipping squad at the end of this season, simply because they've got absolutely no backbone. We need players who are going to fight and give a hell of a lot more than this lot shown over this season. It's absolutely shameful what they've the position they find themselves in, and they're going to find the club in a position where it's not actually gone down. The likelihood is we're not going to go down, irrespective of what they've shown. Simply because there have been clubs that have been in a worse situation than us, but that doesn't excuse them. It's not through through sheer effort and determination that they've managed to keep the club out of League One is simply because other clubs have been more inept than they are.
Well, you said that with last season, if we'd have got 43 points last season, we'd have been 23rd or 22nd rather, and 8 points off safety. As it happens, 43 points, which it kind of looks like we're going to be leaving the season on at the moment, means that we're 2 points clear of the drop zone at the moment, 19th. So how is there 5 teams that have done worse than us this year so far? It beggars belief, really. And let's go through the permutations then for the Cardiff game, whether we will stay up or not. Basically, if Birmingham lose their game at home to Fulham, we're safe, no matter what. If Barnsley fail to beat Derby away from home, we're safe, no matter what. If Burton fail to win in their game away at Preston, we're safe, no matter what. Bolton can't catch us because of goal difference, and we're only worried if all of those 3 things that I mentioned above happen. So if
we're not going to lose, Bolton aren't going to win 6-0.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that what you're saying?
So it's a goal difference swing that ain't going to happen, basically. And if it does, then we deserve to go down anyway, so it doesn't matter. So if Birmingham draw and Barnsley win and Burton win, we're down. So long as we lose, obviously, if we match Birmingham's result, then we're safe no matter what. Again, I mean, do you think it's going to happen? It just can't, can it? Really?
Do you know? I know we're all looking at this in a very negative fashion. Let's face it. The thing that strikes me is just how 10 years ago it was Reading, Fulham, and Birmingham sort of fighting for that one non-relegation place, as it were, and suddenly it's Reading, Birmingham, and Fulham, and all right, different scenarios. But 10 years later, it's the same clubs fighting out for something totally different. Well. Funny how football and Bolton as well, of course. Yeah, football swinging itself in swinging itself in roundabouts. So will it happen? Probably not. I mean, for Reading to lose, Bolton to win, Birmingham to win, Barnsley to win. Am I missing one?
Burton.
Burton to win. That it's 250 to 1. So the likelihood, no. It would take an extraordinary sequence of events to for us to go down. I think I saw a percentage chance of it happening. It's about 1%. But at the same time, if we did go down, it would be such a Reading thing to do, wouldn't it? The year ends in 8 and all that. That the whole sort of conspiracy, I suppose, is probably not the wrong word. Conspiracy suggests it's a little bit deliberate, but you get what I mean. It wouldn't. Put it this way, it wouldn't surprise me if it happened. It's unlikely to happen, but 29, nearly 30 years of watching a lot of football and in blue and white, there's not a lot that surprises me anymore. If Leicester can win the Premier League, then Reading can get relegated to League One in these circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about the Cardiff game in the end of the show. We've got quite a big mailbag to get through, so I'm going to do Newsbites. I'm going to whip through Newsbites, let you know what's going on around the club and the other teams, and then we'll jump into Mailbag and answer your specific questions on what is going wrong at the club. And looking at it in front of me now, there are quite a few of them.
Reading Newsbites on the Tilehurst End podcast.
Right, Newsbites time. Let's crack on. 60-second news flash. Liam Moore is the player of the season in the club's vote. In official Tilehurst End player of the season vote will be happening after the season ends, as is customary. Liam Kelly third, question mark over that. By a lot of people. Mo Barrow second. We're going to have a good 6 or 7 people to vote on, though, from our ratings and everything. And actually, if we're only including the top 6 people from the Tilehurst End player ratings over the course of the season, Liam Kelly doesn't get in. So we'll have to see what we're going to do about that one. Some people might not be very happy if we sack the Academy kid out of the player of the season vote. Under 23s won 3-1 at home to Stoke last time out. So they're in the Premier League 2 playoffs. They face Aston Villa at Villa Park on Tuesday. Winner of that, it's only a 1-game, penalties if it needs it. Winner faces Borough or Brighton in the final over the course of next weekend to decide who gets promoted out of the Premier League 2nd Division for the under 23s. Under-18s beat Brighton 2-1 to end the season. They finished 11th of 12 in the Premier League Under-18s table. Not a great season, but Under-18s boss David Dodds said after the Brighton win, all in all, it has been another pleasing season. A majority of the Under-18 squad have played up with the Under-23s, and there's been plenty of progress. There's still lots of learning to be done, but we've made good progress, and I think that's a very fair point, because the likes of Danny Loader and Jack Nolan are almost emerging as the next ones to look out for, and they're only 16, 17, so if they're up with the Under-23s already, that is not a bad thing. And the women won again, 2-0 at Sunderland on Sunday. Final home game of the season is their next game, Saturday, May the 12th, as I said earlier in the show, versus Liverpool at the Mansard. They're currently third in the table. There's only 3 points between them and sixth. Top two into Europe, so at the moment Man City is second on 29 points. Reading and Arsenal both a point behind them. Then it's Birmingham 26, Liverpool 25. So really big game on May the 12th at the Mansard for the women. Definitely get down to that if you've got a chance. I think it's at 2 p.m. on the Sunday, that is. And Reading within a shot of getting into the Women's Champions League, which would be a massive achievement for a club, especially fighting Man City and Arsenal. This is good stuff from the women's team, and hopefully, as I say, we'll be having a podcast on that before the game. Right then, Newsbites done. That's your news in 60 seconds, or that's about 2 minutes and a half. On to the mailbag.
Get social with the boys.
Find them on Twitter
at the Tilehurst End
and facebook.com/the Tilehurst End.
First question then, Dave, for the mailbag. Bet72 asks, mailbag or sick bag? Which is just about as how it goes. Ben Greenwood has asked, I imagine it's going to be all a little bit negative, so just to raise spirits a bit before we get started, what is the funniest joke you know?
I couldn't repeat it.
I think Liam Moore's defending for the first goal is what I'm going to go with for the funniest joke I know. Just again, because if I said the funniest joke, I actually know that I kind of say to people when they ask me that, there's probably going to be people of other nations from around the UK who will get quite offended with the joke, as much as it's only a lovely playful joke. So we'll move on then to what Michael has asked over the email he sent us in at the tilehurstend@gmail.com. Michael asked, just want to start off by saying you guys do great work. I live outside the UK and I get very limited information on the Royals if it wasn't up for you guys, so great work from you. Thank you very much for that, Michael. Seeing that the season nearly at the end and we can reflect on some of the things that have happened, do you think Stephen Reed's departure just before the start of the season had a big part to play in how poor we've been? Also, do you have any further info on why he left? Fingers crossed we can both stay up and spoil Cardiff's party at the weekend. The thing is with Stephen Reed, I watched him on the Crystal Palace game on the weekend. They beat Leicester 5-0 and he was right in Roy Hodgson's ear, and I think with Stephen Reed, he just got offered a better job.
Basically, yeah, as far as I'm aware. I'm not sure there was anything underhand or whatever. Yeah, better job at Palace. Do I think it's been a particularly huge effect? I'm not convinced it is, because ultimately the position we're in is as much to do with managerial lack of acumen, and as I've mentioned on many occasions, simply a lack of backbone, a lack of bottle with the players. The one element that was sorely missing on Saturday, and it became. I've questioned it throughout the whole season. I'm not entirely sure it'd have made much of a difference, but Saturday I'm absolutely convinced he would have done was Danny Williams, because even if we'd have gone 1-0 down, we wouldn't have lost that game 4-0. I don't think we may well have gone on to lose the game, but we wouldn't have lost that game 4-0 with Danny Williams on that pitch. So quite frankly, it suddenly hit me that his drive and his ability to be able to get players play into a similar level of work rate at the very least to him is sorely missing, and we didn't replace him, quite frankly. And we've suffered for it big time. I'm not suggesting, as I say, he's the absolute be all and end all. I mean, that ultimately the game, you need players to up their game by themselves. But certain players, they drag other players along with them, and Danny Williams is one of those players. And I'm talking to a Huddersfield fan tonight. I've been down the pub with one of them tonight, and and a lot of their supporters are saying how much they've missed him in the last month or so because he's been injured. Just purely his work rate and his drive and his ability to get players playing to the same level that he's playing at. He might not be the most skillful, but his work rate, there's no player that will work any harder than he will. And like I say, if he'd have been on the pitch on Saturday, we may well have gone 1-0 down, but we would not have lost that game 4-0.
Yeah, it's an interesting point about the sort of infectious mentality that he would bring. Andy Halls asks, should Clement have been given a long-term deal, or should we have just given him to the end of the season and then regrouped? I think my issue with giving him to the end of the season is kind of, as you said at the start of the show, Dave, if you don't care, then you don't perform. It's Tommy Elphick on loan as an example of someone who maybe didn't really care if we conceded a fourth goal, no skin off his back sort of thing. If you have Clement in on a short-term deal, obviously let's say he would have agreed to that, then maybe he wouldn't care. If you only have a caretaker in and then go for someone, then maybe we don't get those wins over QPR and Preston and we are in the relegation zone. So it's a hard one to pick, but I think for the moment I'm just about satisfied that Clement got given a long-term deal.
I think so. I mean, I was never have I been in favour of a manager who takes on a job for 2 or 3 months. I'm not entirely convinced, and I'm saying entirely, I'm not at all convinced that that's the way to go. It's short-termism at its finest. And in football, I mean, football is an increasingly short-term game. And I think if you have clubs that can potentially buck the trend, then more power to them. I mean, Paul Clement, and we had Yatshdam on, what was it, on a 3-year deal, 4-year deal, something like that. We were building for the long term, and Stam laid foundations. And in order to continue building, you need to look medium term and long term. You can't just look short term. If you're going to look short term, then you go for an instant impact manager that like Barnet continually do with Martin Allen. You totally go against all of your principles, and the principles that this club has instilled, and the owners want is one of playing, or so we're told, playing it out from the back and playing sort of attractive passing football. I'm not entirely convinced Paul Clement is the man for that. I think Paul Clement happens to be, and this is very superficial and perhaps unfair, but my impression is that Clement and Gourlay work together. Gourlay likes Clement, and he sees a potential manager with a little bit of tactical nous about him. Has worked with some of the biggest names in football, and so he's got the job. My pick would have been someone totally different. In fact, I would have gone for somebody already in a job personally. One of my biggest issues with having a manager outside of a job is either they've reached their peak at a club and have left, or they failed at another club and have been sacked or have moved on. So, Paul Clement at Derby and Swansea, he was sacked at Derby. Derby fans weren't overly enamoured with him, but were also thought that he was harshly treated. He was sacked at Swansea, and there were reasons for that. But again, there were also people in football that say he was harshly treated, particularly given they didn't particularly replace the quality that they lost in the summer. But you got to look at it and say he doesn't play particularly attractive football. Now the Chinese may want that. The Chinese owners may want that. I certainly don't. But having said that, you still, you look at the club and the club have got to build for the long term and hope that they've made the right appointment. And so, a long-term deal ultimately isn't necessarily a bad thing. At least it provides some form of stability. You've just got to hope he's got a bit of tactical nous about him to be able to, produce the results that are required, and then, build a team for next season that's going to do significantly better than we're doing at the moment.
Speaking of which, Ryan Jeffries asked, who are the main players you want to leave this summer? And he also asked, do you rate Aluko's performances since the start of the season? Ryan thinks he's been average. I can't disagree with that. I think Aluko has been hot and cold, and the majority of that has been cold, which has been frustrating when you've seen the occasional times he's plucked out a really good goal or really good assist. In terms of the main players I want to leave this summer, I'm honestly not that fussy. So there's a couple like Liam Moore, and some of the Omar Richards, I suppose, as well, some of the academy products, someone like Bodvarsson I wouldn't mind staying around, but generally speaking, if you name 15 players out of that squad that leave, I don't mind which ones it is. There's some that I'd like to see leave more than others, but even then I'm not sure that they're the realistic ones that will be sold. So in terms of players I want to see leave, I'm not entirely sure whether I can name anyone over anyone else. So let's get a couple of these. Alex Everson says, is it over? The relegation battle or the season in general? Not yet, sadly. James Grover also asks, can you see any of our players that have been loaned out this season making a return next season? He says, for example, Jonathan Bond, who's been at Peterborough, and Dennis Rackles, who's been at Lech Poznan. I think the case with Rackles is that we've moved on to Cracovia.
Jonathan Bond is really well liked by Peterborough fans. If you look at them on Twitter and Facebook and whatever, I'm believe it or not, I'm friends with Dara McAntony on Facebook, and there are many Peterborough fans who engage. He's very active on social media.
Oh yeah.
And much of the praise has been for Jonathan Bond this season. But the feedback is basically there's no way they could afford him on his current wages, which perhaps speaks volumes about the state of the club and the financial status of the club, about Reading Football Club. I just want to go back to any players that we'd like to see leave. I generally think that we shouldn't be looking at players leaving. We should be getting players in. All right, you've got to have players that leave, but more importantly is the character of the player that you receive, because we've got so many technically gifted players who have no or very little backbone. And it's a common theme in tonight's podcast, which has been so horribly exposed this weekend, is the lack of backbone in the side. But if you're going to be signing players, it's more important to sign players who have got hearts. They've got ability is one thing, but heart and backbone, spine, that kind of thing is every bit, and professional pride and personal pride in their performance is every bit as much a quality as their ability. And like I say, you can look at the likes of John Swift and Tiago Ilori and Liam Kelly and Mo Barrow and Shawnee Aluko and Jan Kermigan, all those players. They may well be technically very gifted players, but they're not leaders. They've displayed on Saturday a distinct lack of professional pride. Chris Martin as well, we can add into there. A lack of pride, a lack of heart, a distinct just lack of such personal qualities that are required on top of ability, which really hurts me as a supporter and should hurt them. And as I said at the start, Chris Gunter coming out and turning around and saying, yes, thank you for coming, and all I can say is we're hurting. It's platitudes, because it keeps happening. It simply keeps happening. So we've got to be looking at players that we sign to have to basically be showing heart and leadership. That's the important thing, rather than looking at players to leave. We need players to drag those players who aren't performing now up to a level that the supporters and those players who we bring in with that level of leadership expect. Because at the moment, they're not.
Yeah, David Johnson asks about the boardroom scene at the moment. He says, very little seems to be coming out. Well, to be fair, very little comes out of the club in general these days. It's a bit of a closed shop when it comes to injury news and transfer rumours and that sort of stuff that us fans sort of survive on. Boardroom scene then, Dave, is it something you may have heard of? I can't imagine that there's anything going on other than just hoping it all tides over itself for the summer.
Well, funny you should say that, and I saw this on Twitter earlier, and I did have a little smile. I can say both owners were at the club, were at the game on Saturday, with all of their advisors, and so there was a large contingent of the Chinese there, including, as I say, both owners. They don't say much; they're publicity shy. That's what we can say. The sister. Is it Dai Zhong Li? She's been at most games. She's been at most games this season. They're not in the sort of the Premier Lounge or the executive box in the centre on the halfway line. They have a quiet box along one side. So let's say they're not publicity. They don't want the publicity. But I can say that as I say, they were definitely there on Saturday. I had that from just before I walked into the South Stand. As one of the organisers, a couple of club officials mentioned to me that they were all here, and so we need to basically make an extra, a decent effort, shall we say, to make sure that the noise is from the South Stand is up there with what was required. I think we did, but at the same time, they can't have been impressed with what they saw on Saturday. But the long and short of it is that they're publicity shy. But put it this way, they're not going to be, giving interviews like Tiger was in the local press. That's just not going to happen. It's as simple as that. Their mouthpiece is Ron Gourlay.
Yeah.
And that's basically what you're going to get. They do come to games, particularly the sister. She's regularly at games. We know that they are. We've heard on a couple of occasions that they are very, very pleased. In fact, after the Sunderland game, Daijong Lee actually messaged, if it wasn't Adam Benson, then certainly the commercial director, then there was certainly someone close to him to say that she was very, very impressed with what the South Stand were doing in terms of atmosphere. So the South Stand in particular has got their support at the very least. It remains to be seen what happens next season. The long and short of it is, yes, they are in contact. They're in constant communication with certain characters within the club, but don't expect anything public from them. That's just the way they operate. The mouthpiece is Ron Gourlay. He's an experienced man in the world of football. Might not be to everybody's taste. I've met him personally once. He seems to be a fairly decent and straightforward, generous and honest man. So that's what you're going to get, basically.
Yeah, I think it's good that they are going to the games. It's also, a lot of it is going to come down to money at the end of the day, isn't it? A lot of it with the training ground and such, that there is maybe work going on to it. With the new training ground, a bear with that is, and it's just something that's going to, as you say, with the lack of publicity, and that's certainly a thing that isn't a negative in my eyes. So long as they are at the club and they're interested, then it's just going to keep going along in the background.
They're watching, and the fact of the matter is they're not like the previous owners or TSI, where there's supposed wealth there, but actually not a great deal. These guys, we know they have actually got genuine wealth, and we can see that with the activity that's going on at the training ground, Bearwood Lakes. And let's not ignore the fact that anything infrastructure related doesn't count for FFP. So they can basically spend what they like in order to provide the best possible facility, and it won't count towards FFP. So as I say, they have got genuine wealth, and it's not sort of fake money, as it were.
Dominic Bailey asks, who can you rely on in the current squad to make a strong challenge besides Moore and McShane? She says there's no others that she can rely on. Our midfield is so lightweight, she says. Gets out muscled every game. Kelly, Swift, Aluko, Bauer in midfield aren't strong enough. Now that is something we have covered fully in depth tonight, I can promise you. So we're moving straight on to Matthew Everson's final question for the mailbag. And it's kind of a double question. Firstly is, are we blinded by our love for bringing through academy players versus how well they actually play? For example, Liam Kelly coming near the player of the season, he says is a true sign of this. Again, something we kind of covered and something I fully agree with, as much as I love the academy players, such as I think Omar Richards has a good season. And I think Kelly has had an okay season. But third best in the squad, I'm not so sure. Then again, it is quite hard to name exactly who has been better week in, week out. Finally, the one that I want to put to you then, Dave, he asks, if we went down, likelihood of promotion, ? League One football is a very different class. If, the impossible, the inevitably unlikely happens, League One football isn't really going to suit a team that can't get a bit of backbone and spirit in them, is it?
No, not at all. Chance of going up, you've got to take a look at the Wigan model. They've appointed managers. When did they go down? 14-15. They immediately appointed Gary Caldwell. They didn't give him anywhere near enough chance in Championship football last season, but they found a formula. And then went straight back down again. They appointed one of the managers who, had he not been at Wigan, I would have actually looked to appoint myself. In Scousguy, formerly at
Paul Cook.
That's it, Paul Cook. There's a formula for getting out, as there is for every division. There's a formula for getting out of there. Cook has evidently got it. Cook is actually a very, very good manager and will be a Premier League manager one day. He's very intelligent, very savvy for the level that he's managed at. It remains to be seen, obviously, what happens at Championship level, but I think he has the ability and the wherewithal to actually manage at Championship level and do really, really well. We'll see what happens next season. The squad that we've got right now, no, because the lower you go, the more you have to win your physical battle, because there's as much work rate is only so much in a game, but it also counts for a lot. And the lower you go, the more it counts for. The more, should we call it a sort of a ratio of performance? You absolutely need to have quality to play at the very, very top level, but the work rate needs to be there. League One, League Two, you're looking more. The players aren't anywhere near as technically gifted as at the top level or at the top end of the Championship. But if you're not putting in the effort, and you're not displaying enough heart and fight, then you're not going to be, you're going to be ripped apart at that level. There are still some big clubs down there in that division. Look at Portsmouth. You look at Sheffield United were down there for a number of years. Wigan are a club of a size similar to Reading, and have been sort of yo-yoing over the last few seasons. Huddersfield were down there for a good number of seasons. Huddersfield didn't play Championship football for 15 years. It's difficult to get out of that division unless you've actually got the heart and fight and the wherewithal to on the pitch to be able to win your battle. With the current squad, there's no way we'd get up. In fact, I'd actually suggest we finish bottom half. It's talented, individually talented, but by Christ, does it lack leaders?
I don't want to go and play a League One team with John Swift and Liam Kelly as the centre midfield. They are going to walk all over it. And I think the work rate and everything, the physicality from the Championship to League One arguably goes up. And we're a team that lacks those things. It's very easy. The thing is, we've not mentioned it so much in the last few weeks since Clement's been in charge, but with Yapstam, it was very easy to get a game plan to get over Reading. And that's not going to change if you're in League One. It's not going to change next season unless you have significant personnel changes that changes the system, changes the style dramatically. And I can't.
But look at the way we struggled against Stevenage in the FA Cup at the away game. I mean, it was ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. That's what you'd get.
Yes, a 0-0 draw there. That is what you get week in, week out.
That's what you get. And that's literally what you get every season. You go to Oldham Athletic on a Tuesday night at Boundary Park. That's what you're going to get. You go to Rochdale if they stay up on a Tuesday night at Spotland. That's what you're going to get. You literally say absolutely what you say is literally right. You're not going to go to Rochdale and have Liam Kelly and John Swift in the middle of the park and expect to win the game, because you're just going to be out-battled. You're physically out-battled, and you're going to end up with the ball, losing the ball left, right and centre, and it's going to be coming straight back at you. Direct more often than not. That's not to suggest that that the players down in League One aren't talented. But ultimately, it is more of an attritional battle. And yeah, you're going to end up being outfought with the players that we've got. With a forward line of Kermigan who can put himself about, but then just behind him or alongside him, you've got Swift, Kelly, Aluko and Barrow. Sorry, no. That would scare me in League One.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't scare many League One teams, but before we have to go to Rochdale and before we have to go to Doncaster and all those other sort of teams, we do have to go to Cardiff.
Hey, I'd take Doncaster. I'd take Doncaster. We've won 31 or 40 games against them in our history.
Well, I tell you what, we've got a decent record against Cardiff as well, and I'll tell you that stat after this little break.
The Tilehurst End Podcast.
By Reading fans, for Reading fans.
We've been to Cardiff quite a few times in recent years. FA Cup, we went there and won. Last season, we went there and won. Beat them at home last year as well. Didn't lose against them this season in the Championship. 1 loss in 7 versus Cardiff. And I'm going to tell you why I don't care about that fact, and that's because the form book of any kind, positive or negative to Reading, goes out the window on the last day of the season when Cardiff know they have to win. If they draw, Fulham can win and jump them for second place. Cardiff have to beat Reading on Sunday at 12:30 on Sky Sports Football. Fact. That can help Reading quite considerably if we're going to nick a cheeky point or upset something. This is the question: can we troll Neil Warnock?
We have a history of doing it.
Stranger things have
We
happened.
absolutely have a history of doing it. I think our record against Neil Warnock teams, dating back to his time at Notts County, is actually exceptional.
Yeah.
I think he's a very, very wily and experienced manager, and he's had 7 promotions going for his 8. And don't get me wrong, I actually think he's going to do it. But I think, and I'm just going off my memory here, he has only ever beaten a Reading side on 4 occasions out of nearly 30 games. 2 of those were for QPR in 2010-11. So you're looking at I think he beat us once for Notts County in his very, very early days management. And I think I know that he also beat us on his very first appearance here for Sheffield United, the 2-0 in December 2002. I think that they are the only.
Which was my second game at the Madstad. That was. I remember that one.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I can remember. Oh, it was the infamous John Mackey Carla Saba game. He's only ever beaten us, I'm absolutely convinced of it, 4 times in his history. So we have an exceptional record against his sides. We also have a decent record at the Cardiff City Stadium. But you say we've only lost once against Cardiff in 7, which is fair. But you go back over longer term history, it's actually not that great. I'm going back to Ninian Park days. I could literally reel off in Cardiff, literally reel off the results 99-2000 Chris Gasper game. We lost 1-0. 2001-2 was 2-2. We actually got away with one there. 3-4. We won that day. 4-5, lost 2-0 in shameful circumstances towards the back end of the season. Stuck 5 past him in 05-06, but then 08-09, 2-2. 9-10, first visit to the Cardiff City Stadium, 0-0, 2-2. There's a lot of draws there. And then of course we beat them in the playoffs.
I'm surprised you've missed one out as well.
I have missed one out, have I?
Yeah, the FA, our last ever trip to Ninian Park in the FA Cup in 2008, it must have been, was a 2-0 defeat in the 3rd round of the FA Cup, which I remember because I was there.
Yeah,
so that was our last trip to Ninian Park.
Looking at the league games, yes, you're absolutely right. We did lose 2-0. It was a pretty poor day to be all round, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, that was
cold. The start of the rot, really. All right, it was a second string Reading, but there's a lot of draws there. Put it that way. We have lost a couple of games there, sort of 3 or 4 over the period. But do you know what? I simply can't. I can't see it. But then you look back to 2015. How many of us could see us getting anything from Derby at the last day of the season? Not many. And we went there and won 3-0. Now, I'm not suggesting this would happen. But, you never know the pressure might get to Cardiff. And while I'd like to see us win, absolutely would like to see us win, Personally, I think I'd actually prefer Cardiff to go up than Fulham, to be honest with you.
Oh, I don't know. I think I'd rather get Fulham out. The hype around Fulham and the inevitable sense of their, the media, etc., loving them does kind of make me want to get the Fulham out the league ASAP.
I would just love to see Fulham not go up and then spaff it in the playoffs again. Just purely like last season, they'll play Derby or they'll play Preston or Brentford or whoever it is that they end up playing. The media loving over Fulham and sort of everything being Fulham. They do play good football, don't get me wrong, but there's a sense of entitlement about Craven Cottage now on the back of that, which would be so nice. And don't get me wrong, I think next season, if they did stay down, I think they'd walk the division in a similar manner to the way Wolves have done this season. But it's all Fulham, and it would be so nice if a team just rocked up and basically did what we did to them. It would be quite amusing, actually.
No, I would find it very amusing. The problem is this year's playoffs, a slight tangent we've gone off here, is that I don't like any of the teams in it. Fulham, I don't like. Cardiff, if they're in it, I don't like. Warnock. Villa, I don't like. Bow, I don't like. Derby, I don't like. Preston, I suppose I would want Preston to win it if they're in it. Millwall aren't going to be in it. Brentford and Bristol City, I probably would happily see you go up, but they're not going to be in it. So, I mean, if it's Villa versus Cardiff or Villa versus Fulham in the playoff final, I will not be watching it. Let's put it that way. But anyway,
I would, and I'd be rooting for Villa, and I actually think Villa would do it because Steve Bruce is a wily old character.
Yeah, I like Steve Bruce. I don't like John Terry or Snodgrass or Villa fans or anything like that, though. But anyway, let's talk about Reading, because what is the route to victory then? Do we make just drastic team changes? Do we throw in Wynnum Hotter? Do you throw in Sam Smith up front? Do you take out Ilori and put in Tom Holmes? Do you just... It might look embarrassing if we lose 6-0. It might look silly on the TV for naming the lineup. Who are these kids playing? But do you just do it anyway? Just say, sod the overarching plot line and just do what we want to do and drop the players that lost 4-0 to Ipswich?
I don't know, to be brutally honest with you. My heart is leaning towards dropping some of the players that displayed so little heart at 3-0 on Saturday. There's no professional pride. You've got to have players who want to play for the shirt. If that means dropping Kelly, if that means dropping Swift, if that means dropping Ilori or even Liam Moore or Chris Gunter, quite frankly, then yeah, fine, do it. Let's face it, the likelihood of Barnsley, Bolton, Birmingham and Burton all getting positive results is slim, and you could hedge your bets and play an inexperienced side that's going to play with heart and desire but naivety. And you know what? I don't think any one of the 1,600 Reading fans that who are travelling to Cardiff on Saturday could fail to get behind them. And I genuinely hope they do it if we do that. But if we go there and shamefacedly lose 3-0 and be absolutely outplayed with no bottle, no heart, no desire, we play a similar side to what we've played over the last few weeks, then they deserve all the pelters that they get. Because let's face it, they still are not safe from relegation, and they need to show that they care. And against Villa, against Sheffield Wednesday, and against Ipswich, they haven't displayed that.
Yeah.
This is the last chance to display that, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it is. And, well, one last nugget of information I'll leave. Since relegation, Reading have only lost one of our 4 final days. 2 wins, a draw and a loss, which is Blackburn under Brian McDermott. So Reading are previous. It's a thing that it's completely form book out the window. Even then, Reading do occasionally upset the odds. They do occasionally troll a team. And a Derby-esque performance in the Championship as well cannot be ruled out. So there has to be cause for optimism in a slight, really kind of almost sarcastic way, I think, going into this game. It's gallows humour, isn't it, really, whether we win this or not? Hopefully it won't cost us our place in the league, but in something that's perhaps more important than the league is the Tilehurst End Prediction League. And it is the last chance to claim some points. And it is the last chance for you, my friend, to jump off the bottom. Well, the only person you can knock onto the bottom with 3 points, so you need the scoreline perfect against Cardiff, is me, because I'm next to bottom. And it's currently Westy, and all the years of doing this, Westy's never been near the top, and he's actually in the lead on 28 points. Tom Crocker 27, Johnny 25, Wim 24, I'm on 21, so I need 3 to level Wim, and I'll jump him if I do. because of my tiebreaker, which I'll discuss at the end of the season. You're on 19, so you need it correct, basically, and you need me to be wrong. So what is your official prediction for this game, then?
I'm not giving it yet until you give yours.
Oh, well, I've already written it into the spreadsheet, so I've gone 0-0. Because
really?
I mean, I may as well go for broke and jump those 3 points. If I get above Wim, then on the tiebreak, which I've discussed over the podcast a little bit, is that what we predicted, if it's all correct, it delivers a points total, and whoever's closest to the Reading points total will win sort of tiebreakers in that sense. So basically, if Westy and Tom are level, Tom won't win. If me and Wim are level, I'll jump Wim in that sense. I'll post it all online at the end of the season, but in terms of tiebreakers, I just want to nudge up another place, basically.
I'm going to go 3-0 defeat.
3-0 defeat, playing it safe. Fair enough. I don't blame you. My own naivety in these things are.
Will have Cardiff. They know what they need to do. They're gonna smack us, basically. They're gonna outfight us, outheart us. They've got quality as well. Let's not ignore the fact that they're very direct Warnock side. They've got Junior Hoylett. They've got Nathaniel Mendez-Lang. They've got Kenneth Zahor. Aaron Gunnarsson is injured, but they've got quality, across their side, battling quality. They're going to outfight us. They're going to outfight us, and they're going to end up winning with that 30,000 crowd behind them. They're going to end up winning 3-0.
Yeah, I think they will be us, but I'm just playing games in the prediction league because, it's kind of emblematic of Reading's season. It's just not gone the way I thought it was going to. I've lacked fight and desire. I've not pulled my finger out at the right time. I've got the odd lucky result here and there, and the bread and butter of it I've failed in. So hopefully I'm just going to avoid the bottom spot. Hopefully that'll be yourself, and we'll get a 0-0 draw, and I'll jump at Wim as well. But I mean, I highly doubt it. And we'll be delivering the verdict on the prediction league at the end of the season in the end of season podcast, which will be just under a fortnight from now. We're not going to rush to cover the Cardiff game. Let's put it that way. It's going to be unless we go down, obviously, it's not going to be something to delve into too quickly. We'll let the dust settle from that. And hopefully something good happens. It's on TV, so where will you be watching it from, Dave? Are you going to go down to Cardiff, or are you watching on TV?
I'm there. Yeah, I'll be going down there.
Good stuff. I'm, for the record, working as I usually am on weekends, so I won't be able to go down. And it's also Sunday, and trains to Cardiff on a Sunday. I used to live there. It was crap trying to get across to Cardiff on a Sunday. Usually they don't even let you go down the tunnel. So thank you to all those who will go down. Good luck to you. I doff my cap and say good journeys, and just sing out, and let's have this season over, and let's be on the right side of the dotted line. And come on, you arse.
You smile, funny how the crumbs